Hi everybody, and welcome to the Data Science and Information Technology information session in the Meet Melbourne Graduate 2020 online series. In this session, as you would expect, we'll be covering some graduate study options in the different areas of data science and IT here at the University of Melbourne. My name is Katie Potts and I'm a Student Recruitment Coordinator in Melbourne School of Engineering. I will be your moderator for the evening. And before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge the country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, the University of Melbourne acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. So some of you might be joining us from outside of Australia, and that might be something you haven't heard before, but I really do respect the lands that we meet on. Tonight it's a little bit different being a webinar, but it's still really important to me that we do that. I'd like to thank you all for joining this webinar. We're thrilled to have you from around Australia, and as I mentioned, some people may be from overseas. This webinar will be recorded, so if there's anything that you really would like to hear again or you may have missed something, you'll be able to access it afterwards on our website. Just a little housekeeping moment. So throughout the session, because your microphones aren't on, you still can type your questions. You can see all of us on screen here, but we also have colleagues from around Melbourne in the background answering your questions from both the Faculty of Science, Melbourne School of Engineering and our onshore recruitment team. So please do submit them and we'll answer them throughout the session. So the format for tonight, I will start with a short presentation to cover off our areas of study, and then you'll be hearing from our expert panel. So from the Faculty of Science, we have Associate Professor Michael Kirley, who is going to talk to us about data science. From Melbourne School of Engineering, we have Dr. Sean Maynar to talk to us about information systems. And Professor Shanika Karunasekera to talk to us about software engineering and computer science. And Dr. Kris Ehinger to talk about information technology. So something that's really important to students when I speak to them is about our rankings. You'll be pleased to know we're #1 in Australia for computer science and number 32 in the world. So that's the 2020 rankings. Also really important to our students is knowing that after they study all these really important areas that they are going to be able to get a job. And we do really well here. #7 in the world, which, you know, if I was about to study IT or data science, I would definitely want to be looking at those rankings. So the courses that we're going to cover off tonight are the Masters of Information Systems, the Master of Data Science, Master of Information Technology, Master of Computer Science, and Master of Engineering, Software and Software with Business. So our panel here will be able to give you some insight into these areas and answer your questions along the way. But before that, I just thought I would cover off some key points. So for the Master of Information Systems, this is for students from many different backgrounds. You might not have an IT background, but you're really interested in driving organisational change in businesses using those business and IT skills. You'll have access to internships, industry projects and innovation challenges. This is across the board for all of our courses. And there's 3 streams available, so professional, research and health. And as you can see there, it's accredited by the Australian Computing Society, which is really important to us to acknowledge. The Master of Data Science. So a lot of data science programs are about reading the data, but as Michael will touch on, the Master of Data Science at the University of Melbourne is really about building those models. So it's a multidisciplinary program combining computer science, data science, and mathematical statistics. There's a year-long industry project, so you'll be working on real-world data from companies and organisations outside of the University of Melbourne and potentially within the University of Melbourne. You might come from a background in computer science or statistics, or you might have both, and your course will be tailored to you to meet those needs. And you'll also have a range of access to elective options as well. For the Master of Information Technology, this is for students who would like to gain technical skills in IT. So you'll become an expert in those skills. As you can see, we have quite a few specializations on offer. So artificial intelligence, computing, cybersecurity, distributed computing, and human-computer interaction. And you know, it's always evolving. So we're up to date with all those leading research areas, and you know, you'll be taught by some of the leaders in the field, which is also an area that's very important to all of our students. So again, accredited by the ACS, so the Australian Computing Society. And then the Master of Computer Science. So a lot of students, when we speak to them, say, I want to study computer science, but what they actually mean is IT or IS or software. But at the University of Melbourne, computer science is a particular course. So it's a 1-year research project in a 2-year course. So for those students who are really looking to deep dive into research as a pathway either to industry or to PhD. So you'll do some core subjects to build your foundation for that research project, but in your 2nd year, it'll be a full research project. And students that are looking to go into this degree would have come from a computer science background in their undergraduate degree. The Master of Engineering Software and Master of Engineering Software with Business. So these are 2 options in the engineering suite. They're accredited by Engineers Australia, and EURACE, so you'll be accredited globally. And as you can see, this is for somebody who would like to have both an engineering degree and that software knowledge and expertise. So you're tackling those large-scale real-world software design projects, but I'm going to leave it to the experts to tell you a bit more about those. So as I mentioned, we have our panel. In a moment, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves to you. But before that, I'd just like to make them a little bit bigger on the screen. Okay.
I'm bigger.
Okay, so first off, if I can get Dr. Sean Maynar, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and what is information systems?
So I'm the coordinator of the Master of Information Systems. I've been at the University of Melbourne going on 24 years now. I've been coordinating for the last 8. My background is I learnt computing at another university, Monash in this case, and did a PhD here at Melbourne. All my research is either in decision support systems, analytics, etc., or in information security from a management perspective. What is 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 the question. I'm going to put my cynical hat on and say that IS is the combination of business and IT together. And what we look at is how can we use IT and the systems of IT and data in organisations and in society. That would be me.
Great, thank you, Sean. And the next, I'm just going to go across my screen. So the next person is Professor Shanika, and I don't want to say your name incorrectly for a second time, so I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Katie. So I will not bother telling my full name. So I'm Shanika from the School of Computing and Information Systems. I've been in the school since 2003. I call myself a software engineer. So my first degree is in electrical engineering, and then my PhD is also in electrical engineering from the University of Cambridge, UK. And then I went into industry. I worked in industry for 8 years as a software engineer in the US, working for a large multinational company, AT&T Bell Labs. And after finishing that career for 8 years, I joined the University of Melbourne to build or lead the software engineering program, is what I have been doing for a long time. So I'm the coordinator for Master of Engineering Software and Software with Business. And today I'll be representing computer science also. So I've been in the school for long enough to have done a lot of curriculum development, and I have a big picture view of both all these degrees. So happy to take questions. In terms of research, I do distributed computing and data mining research. Happy to answer questions.
Fantastic, thank you, Shanika. And next up is Associate Professor Michael Kirley.
Thanks, Katie. I'm in the School of Computing and Information Systems, which is in the School of Engineering. But as Katie introduced me, she said I was in the Faculty of Science. And that's, well, I'm not really in the Faculty of Science, but I actually teach a lot in the Faculty of Science. And that's where the data science degree fits in. It's a joint degree between science and engineering. And we'll talk more about that and answer a lot of your questions. So what's my background? So my PhD was in basically optimization techniques or decision making. And I spend most of my time working in those areas. I do a lot of research in that general area of data mining. And if you're a new student about to enter the University of Melbourne and interested in AI, there's a very good chance you're going to say you want to do some deep learning. And I'm sure Kris is going to say something about that as well. So within the data science field, a lot of the students come in and apply both statistical techniques and computing techniques to tackle real problems. So what's data science? A practical example might be working with the COVID data sets. It might be trying to predict where the disease is going to spread or what's happening. Or it might be looking at some supply chain analysis associated with all the disruptions caused by COVID. Predominantly dealing with very large data sets, trying to find patterns in the data. And that's really what we do a lot of. So we can talk more about that with questions. So conclusion, I am sort of in the Faculty of Science, don't tell anybody. I'm really in engineering, but we work together.
Thank you, Michael. Sorry, I should have said, and representing the Faculty of Science program.
We work together. We work together. That's the point.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Kris, how are you going tonight? And you're representing the Master of Information Technology, but tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm one of the stream coordinators for the Masters of Information Technology. So my background is that I work in AI and computer vision. So I have a little bit of background in human vision. I'm a really recent hire to the University of Melbourne. I've been here for less than a year. And before here, I was working at York University in Canada and Harvard University in the US. I got my PhD from MIT. So our program is pretty broad. As you've seen, there's so many different specialties you can do in the Master of IT. But we cover a lot of different aspects of computing, and we, I think, try to strike a balance between research approaches and really applied stuff that has a lot of applications in industry.
Fantastic. Thank you all for your brief introductions. So, Michael, you have touched on a little bit about the balance between some Faculty of Science and Melbourne School of Engineering subjects, but what is the balance between statistical and computing subjects in the Master of Data Science course?
Predominantly, it's a 50-50 split. It depends on the background you have when you come in. So if you have perhaps an undergraduate degree in computer science, that's great. You can get entry into the course, but perhaps you're lacking a few of the statistics subjects. So as a prerequisite to the Masters of Data Science course, sorry, I shouldn't say prerequisite, I guess there's subjects that you have to do to get you up to speed with the basic mathematics. So you might be doing introduction to statistics subjects, or if I flip it the other way, if you come in with an undergraduate degree in maths or really strong maths, you might be lacking some computing subjects. So in your first part of the course, you'd pick up some of those basic programming subjects, perhaps some basic database system subjects, just to get you up to speed. But predominantly the course is a 50-50 split between statistics and computing, and that's what makes this degree a little bit different to a lot of the other degrees. It's that combination. Did that answer the question, Katie? I can go more, but I might get carried away.
No, that answered the question. Thank you. I'm sure if more come through, we'll go a bit deeper into that one.
And actually, I'll just hog it for one more minute.
No problem.
Shanika mentioned Masters of Computer Science and Masters of IT. Well, there's a lot of overlap between these courses as well. They are very different, but a lot of them will have one or two subjects which are very similar as well. So, okay, I'll stop talking.
No, that's fine. Thank you. We'll go to, that's a good segue to Shanika. So what is the difference between the Master of Computer Science and the Master of Engineering Software?
Yeah, so these are the two degrees, I think, out of the lot. The Master of Information Systems, these two are easy to differentiate. Now, the Master of Science Computer Science is a more research-oriented degree. So 50% of the subjects is a research project. So this is a way to prepare a student who has finished a bachelor's degree in a computing field, computer science, IT, or software engineering, to become a researcher, either go to a PhD or even industry jobs in research. So we do teach advanced courses, but the research training is primary for the Master of Science Computer Science or Master of Computer Science. In contrast, software engineering is more of a professional pathway where we are trying to train somebody to go into a software engineering career or software development career in industry. So again, if you are somebody who has finished an undergraduate degree in computer science, IT, or a similar area, you will, in 2 years, you will be able to become a software engineer. Now, who is a software engineer? This is the large companies who do large-scale software development, like Google, Facebook, Microsoft. They use formal processes to develop large-scale software used by end users. So in the Master of Engineering, we give you the technical skills and also the professional skills around software development, including planning, managing the process, and doing the full development life cycle of software. So in terms of focus, they have different focus, but then if you ask me what is the difference between Master of Engineering Software and the MIT, it is a little bit different. They're similar, but both of them train somebody to go to industry to do software development. But MIT is a course where you're trying to take somebody with a 4-year degree in computing within 1 year to give a more stream-specific focus in an area. Or if you don't have an IT background, to take you through a 2-year degree to make you an IT professional. But both these software engineering and MIT would end up being industry software developers. And one other difference with the MIT and the software engineering is the accreditation. So because software engineering is an engineering degree, it gets accreditation from engineering bodies, plus computing bodies. So Australian Computer Society, European, and also the Engineers Australia.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Very accredited after a software degree. Speaking of career outcomes, Sean, we've been getting a lot of questions about what a career after the Masters in Information Systems looks like. So that connection to internships and industry projects, and also what jobs our graduates have.
So let's talk about jobs then. Essentially, the MIS degree is aimed at, as I said, teaching you how you can use IT in organisations. So invariably, a lot of our students manage the other degree students eventually. And that's not sort of for saying anything, but a lot of our students become consultants. A lot of them will go out and do project management and end up being project managers in organisations and hire. There's some that do enterprise architecture type jobs. So it's anything in IT essentially, apart from low-level programming big systems and stuff that they're not able to do. It's more that how do I manage those people? How do I manage the organisation's IT? How do I integrate IT in society? But those sort of areas of jobs that they're working at. In terms of internships, like all of the degrees, there is an internship program that you can do. It's worth 2 subjects in every degree. And essentially, you're doing an internship, in our case, in something to do with the IS field. So that could be managing a project, it could be designing software even at a higher level. Just depends on where you end up going.
Fantastic. I think you've answered a few of those questions because that was a very big trend today. So thank you for that. Kris, with the IT, a lot of our students will apply and they would like to go into the computing stream, and then they do some subjects and they go, oh, actually, I would like to take my path a different way. Is that possible with the Masters of IT, and how would a student fully decide which stream they want to participate in?
Yeah, that is largely possible. So it's a 2-year degree, and if you enter at the start of the 2 years, everybody at the start of the 2 years takes a similar set of introductory subjects that cover a lot of broad topics in computing. And those are the same for every stream. So if you've entered at the 2-year degree and you decide you want to change after 1 semester, that's no problem at all. Even basically in the first year, it's fairly easy to switch across the streams. And then in the final year of the degree, you take more specialized advanced subjects.
Fantastic. And you've mentioned that your research is in AI, and you've worked across some quite well-known institutions. So what's your highlight been in your year at the University of Melbourne and the students that you've led through this degree?
Oh, well, I lead some of the projects as well. So part of the MIT degree is that you can do a capstone project. One of the options is a research project. So yeah, I did a really great project last semester with a student looking at AI algorithms to do visual search, which had some pretty cool results predicting search.
Fantastic. And with those projects, is that something that students are allocated to, or do they need to approach those supervisors? How does it work in the Masters of IT?
I think there is a WAM threshold to do different projects, but assuming you meet the WAM threshold, you would approach a potential supervisor, and together you would work out a project proposal that's interesting to both of you. And then the project supervisor would advise you throughout the course of the project.
Fantastic. So getting to work alongside those leading researchers is always a highlight, isn't it? Michael, we've had some questions about who are the major employers that people from the Master of Data Science work with during their capstone projects?
I'll work with during their capstone project. All right, it depends. There's no one answer to it, right? But if I go through the examples at the minute, so we have 30 groups out at the minute doing their industry-based projects. I cannot remember the names of 30 companies. I can remember the names of some. So the big telecommunication companies, Telstra has a number of teams working for them. Department of Roads and Transport has a large number of teams working for them as well. I won't name the actual industry here, but a large sporting organisation in Melbourne has a number of students looking at data analytics associated with predicting injuries. There's other people working with, I'm not sure whether, it's not Bureau of Meteorology, I should remember the name, but it's looking at some prediction associated with earthquakes. So they're just representative examples. Oh, another one in Australia recently with all the bushfires, so people working with Department of Forestry looking at spread of fires as well. So I should have prepared, I don't have a list of all of the companies, but we have quite a few there. And they're all fun projects. I mean, they work in teams of 3, 4, 5, 6, it depends on the project. And there's certainly different scopes. Some of them have a really strong statistical background. Some of them have a strong machine learning background, but it's really driven by the clients, what they want. Did that answer the question? A little bit.
Yes, it definitely did. I think it really shows.
I guess it's worth emphasizing here is with our data science course, we tend not to place students in the equivalent of the MIS sort of background or MBA type students. They tend to be spread out a little bit more. So that was sort of a direct idea there.
Sure, I think you highlighted that all the placements across data science and IT and IS, they're all very relevant to today. So you're not learning those skills that were relevant 5 years ago. You're really learning those skills that are relevant for now and to build that foundation into the future as well. So I think that's really important to highlight. Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions coming through. So
while you're looking for the question coming through, another company, it's not a bank, but a financial institution. There's a number of students doing automated trading as well, based on the data science stuff. But again, it's not predominantly with the large banking corporations where they're doing that sort of stuff.
Fantastic. I've just got some more IT questions. So, Kris, would you be able to explain just the difference between the specializations in the Masters of IT? So, I know the names sort of give a little bit of an overview, and you've touched on the first year having some similar core subjects, but what does a second year look like that's very different across the specializations?
Okay, so there are 6 of them, so I hope I can remember them all. The 2 that are a little bit broader are computing, which is probably our broadest one, and distributed computing. So computing basically focuses on all aspects of computing, and to some extent you can kind of pick and choose some specialities in there. You can pick a mix of subjects that you want, as long as it's related to computing. It really looks at algorithms and all other aspects. Distributed computing is more focused on distributed computing. And then the more specific ones are spatial computing, which is looking at aspects of IT that relate to spatial data. So mapping, geolocation, those sorts of problems. AI, artificial intelligence, is more specialized on machine learning and AI applications. Cybersecurity is more specialized on cybersecurity. And human-computer interaction is looking at interactive devices, things like wearables, AR, VR. Does that make sense?
Definitely it does. I don't have an IT background, so for me to be able to understand that, I'm pretty sure you've nailed the description, because I've gotten to know them through speaking to students and speaking to our academics. So thank you for that description. Sean, I've just had a question about online studies. So obviously at the moment, everybody in this world, ever-changing world, is studying online, but for our students who would like to do the MIS, who have actually come from industry and have that background, is there any opportunities available to them specifically?
So whilst the MIS itself isn't an online course, and as we know is being taught online like everything else at the moment, there is a course that's been around for about a year now called the Master of IT Management Executive. That course requires you to have at least about 5 to 7 years work experience from memory. And if you have got that work experience and have an IT degree already in any field of IT, then you can come along and do a 1-year full-time equivalent online course to get a master's. Usually most students do 1 or 2 subjects a term, usually 1 a term, and it takes them 2 years to finish the course. That course is aimed at people who are moving up the management chain towards the CIO position, and it's aimed basically to give them enough skills to become a CEO of an organisation to manage that organisation's IT.
Fantastic. And for students who don't have that, 5 to 7, 8 years in their under their belt and they would like to do a Master's in Information Systems, is it possible for them to study part-time on campus?
Yeah, so the Master of IS is designed to handle part-time and full-time students. Approximately 80% of the subjects at some stage during the year will be taught at an evening time slot. There's only around there's 2 core subjects, maybe 3 core subjects that are only taught during the daytime. And that's because of staffing issues, for instance. So you can do it. We have quite a number of students who are doing it, either coming straight from their undergraduate or via the workforce for a few years or even longer. So just
and they're domestic students, aren't they?
There's a lot of domestic students doing it part-time. Of course, overseas students can't do it part-time because of visa regulations, but if you are domestic, yeah, it's definitely possible.
Fantastic, thank you. Lots of evening classes. I've been designing some sample course plans for students so they know that they can study after hours, so it's good to know that it's actually possible. Shanika, I'd just like to ask a bit more about some of the career outcomes for our students. Are you in touch with any of our alumni who might have some interesting roles that you could share with us?
Yeah, so for software engineering students, I think any company that has a IT organization and they do software development, it's an attractive option. So our past students, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, both here and the US have been popular destinations. Atlassian is another company that has a lot of our software engineering graduates. Then Telstra and the other bigger companies which are into IT, they do hire. And on top of that, the consulting companies like Deloitte, they also have need for software engineers because they have that broad spectrum of skills where they could talk to clients, understand the requirements, map them to software system requirements, and then take it all the way through to the development. So that broad set of skills makes software engineers very in high demand with larger companies, and their ability to work in teams, adapt to a process, do risk management, that type of things, which are critical for large-scale software development, they're really useful. And in terms of the Master of Computer Science, although we say that it's a research degree, ideally to take you to a PhD pathway, it is not always the case because there are a lot of companies, especially with the demand for AI, machine learning, data science, and as Michael said before, there's a lot of overlap between these degrees. So depending on what area you do your research in, there is industry demand to take those graduates who have research type of skills in that area. So even the same companies like Google, Microsoft, or even the banks now hire a lot of the computer science students. So the only slight difference is the software engineering degree gives you a lot of software development skills, but the computer science degree still gives you skills in software development, more focused on looking at the research side of it. So there's no big difference between the employers.
That makes perfect sense. We've got a question. So how does student coursework in IT or IS work with the Interaction Design Lab? So I guess that's for Sean or Kris. Sorry, I'm just...
Yeah, Sean made the question, right? Sean, do you want to take that?
It's actually Kris is the person. It's basically the HCI part of the MIT. And students in the MIS do those subjects anyway as electives. But I'm going to leave it to Kris if you're happy to, otherwise I can continue.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the main place would be in the HCI stream of the IT degree. So in that you are expected to take some core subjects in human computing interaction. Some of the subjects are project subjects, so you would actually be working in the lab on a real project, an applied project. And also, of course, as your capstone project, you can opt to do a project in HCI alongside an HCI researcher.
Fantastic. Some budding interactive designers out there. And this one is for whoever would like to jump in. So for the internship subject across any of the degrees here, does the university help find the internship, or is finding the placement separate to the course? So I can talk a little bit about what happened in my office.
I'm happy to take it a bit further and explain. So when we talk about industry engagement subjects, there are different types. So one is internship. Now, the definition of internship is you would go out to industry and work in the industry with the industry partner. We also have industry-based projects, especially in the software engineering degree. We have a semester-long and a year-long industry-based project. Now, the difference is that you do not go to industry, but the industry comes to you with the requirements and you do the development in-house. So both these are industry experiences. Now, in the case of industry-based projects, it is the academics who source these projects and give it as team projects to students to engage in. The students do not have to find their internships. But with the industry internships, you have both. The university finds some and they advertise it and match students to these internships. However, the students also have the option to find their own internships, which will be validated by the university and check whether it's appropriate for an internship, and if so, that becomes an internship pathway. But for these internship projects also, there is a minimum VAM requirement. So you need to meet that requirement to get to the, especially the internships that are in more demand, I would say.
Fantastic. I'll just add to that in the Melbourne School of Engineering and in the Faculty of Science, who look after the two different areas that we're covering tonight, there is full teams to help our students. So if students haven't done an internship here in Melbourne before, they might want to get some skills, so they run workshops to help students with finding those internships and preparing for interviews and that sort of thing as well. So very well supported in the work integrated learning and internship space. But yeah, that was a really good explanation. Did anybody else want to add anything on the internship, work integrated learning, industry connection side of things?
There's actually also subjects that any of the degrees, I think, I'm not sure about data science, but any of the degrees can do that are actually coming out of the management school. So there's actually global practoriums, or a local practorium that some students are doing in the MIT and in the MIS that I know about. So there's lots of different options for internships. And there's also, don't forget, the innovation subject that's running as well. So you can actually design an innovation, if you like, as part of an elective, which is sort of like an internship, not quite.
Fantastic. There's no more questions coming through at the moment, so I'm going to ask a question. Sorry, I'm just got some I prepared earlier. So we've touched on the the diversification of a degree, the interdisciplinary nature of our degrees, and how all of these degrees seem to cross over with each other. But one of the questions I'm really interested in is the specialisation you do competitive in the tea room? So do people at MIS think they're in charge of everybody else, or what happens in the tea room?
We drink tea.
The MIS people just think they're in charge. The data science people will build a model to show them that they're not in charge. That's the difference. They'll analyse the data and come up with sensible conclusions for what works. No, actually, if I take that one a little bit further, sensibly, I supervise lots of research projects in the Masters of Computer Science, as an example. So this semester, I'm supervising 7 students doing Masters of Computer Science projects, but every project is predominantly a data science flavored project where they're using statistical machine learning to predict a particular data set. But that project is really about PhD training or preparing them to go on and do that sort of course. Whereas the projects in the Masters of Data Science tend to be the smaller group-based projects, preparing people more for the industry job. So which one's better? It depends on what the student really wants, except data science is the way to go, people. Just enroll in that one.
He put his advertising head there. So yeah, I think we do try to design them in a way that we can clearly differentiate the degrees. So I think within the school, we clearly know the differences. Sometimes it gets a little bit harder to explain it to the outside what the differences are, because they're not so clear. The names are not very intuitive, but I think if you do dissect the course structures, and over time students, when they study, they understand the differences. So I think internally, I think we are not competing. I would like to say, like, we are more collegial, trying to feed each other.
Yeah, and the courses are actually complementary. There's no reason you couldn't do an MIT and an MIS, or a data science and an MIS, or software engineering MIS, if you wanted to do that at some stage in your life, because they are complementary. And you know, coming into the MIS, we have people from all walks. We have people who studied medicine. We've got people who studied IT. It doesn't matter, because what we're doing, we're taking them to the looking at that from a management perspective and trying to teach them the IT and management. Whereas the MIT and data science has particular foci where they're trying to teach the technology side of things and how do you use that technology to do things, essentially. So I think they're complementary. There's no sort of real angst, if you like.
Fantastic. Thank you for turning my not very serious question into a proper answer for our audience. It's been
wait till we get back to the tea room.
a long few hours. Kris, I have another question. How do students in the MIT course HCI specialization get roles as interactive designers?
I'm not sure. I don't work in the HCI group, but I know there are a lot of opportunities to work on applied projects and work with people in the interaction design lab on a lot of different projects. Are you looking for something more specific?
That was just the question. How do they get a role, and what, I guess, what research opportunities after their specialization if they want to continue from the MIT?
Yeah, I don't know as much about the HCI field. I imagine there's opportunities both kind of on the research side and on more applied side, because the research they're doing sometimes can be, you know, fairly theoretical, or it can be extremely applied into a specific product.
Fantastic, thank you. In terms of all the degrees, obviously the Master of Computer Science is the typical research pathway to PhD for our University of Melbourne students, but is research something that many of our students are going on to from like the MIS or data science?
Can I jump in that one with the data science one? So there are lots of students who enroll in the Masters of Data Science program who want to go on to a PhD program. So Kris mentioned before, sometimes there's that WAM hurdle to get over. So if somebody really wants to do a research project within the data science program, we encourage them to do that, except we make sure they meet a minimum hurdle before they're allowed to just enroll in the research project. So there is a pathway still. You're not cutting off that option by doing the Masters of Data Science. It's just the flavour of your course is different because it's that emphasis of half statistics and half computer science together. But it doesn't cut off your options at all.
Yeah, to add to that, as you said, Master of Computer Science is the designated pathway if you want to go to a PhD, but MIT, software engineering, maybe MIS also, right? Kris, I'm not sure, Sean, about MIS. Definitely after doing a MIT or a software engineering degree, you are eligible to go to a PhD, although you have not done a 100-point research project. The projects you do within the MIT and the software engineering degrees they count as research experience to qualify you to enter a PhD pathway.
From the MIS perspective, there is the research specialisation. Of the students who come into the MIS, we only get around about 10% or 5% of those students will actually take that pathway, because that is the only way you can get to a PhD from MIS. And we also, like the data science, have a fairly high entry to that pathway. You actually have to do the research subject first and get a mark approximately 80 in that subject, and then you have to average at least 75 across your whole first year to be able to do research in your second year of the MIS. So we're sort of, because what you have to realise with the research side of things is, as soon as we say yes to you, you're taking probably 3 hours a week of a supervisor's time to work with you on your project. And that time, they'll help you get through the project. You'll be doing research with them, or for yourself, depending on who the supervisor is. And at the outset of the, at the conclusion of your thesis, hopefully you'll get some publications out of that work as well. So an example at the moment, I have a student who's already got one publication after her first 12.5 points of work, one subject worth, and she's doing 3 more subjects worth now, and she's going to get another publication out of that when she finishes in about 3 weeks. So definitely a pathway from MIS for some students who get the marks. And I suspect that's similar to what the MIT is moving towards now as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think
Thank
that's
you.
right.
Sorry to cut you off, Kris.
I was just agreeing, yeah.
Thank you. And it looks like we're running a little bit over time, so I'm going to wrap it up there. But I would just like to thank our expert panel members for all their information tonight. I've definitely learned a lot that I'm going to be able to help out with our prospective students. I'd also like to thank all the people that are answering questions in the background. So I've only covered some of them that are popping up through, and the entry requirements and those sorts of things have been answered in the background. So thank you very much to our team behind the scenes. And most importantly, thank you to our audience for attending the webinar and submitting your questions. We do these to hear from you and to help you make your decisions about study at Melbourne. So it's really great that you've been able to join us tonight. We hope we have answered all your questions throughout the webinar, but if we haven't, you can always submit more questions on the study website, the same area that you probably registered for this webinar, and we will answer you through that platform there. Again, if you didn't hear some of the information that you're writing notes too rapidly and you didn't get all the information down, you'll be able to listen to the webinar online in a couple of days when it's up on our website for viewing. So those people that didn't get to log in might also be able to join that way as well. So thank you, Sean, Shanika, Michael and Kris, for giving up your evening to speak to our prospective students and to answer all my questions. And I hope everybody has a fantastic evening.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you very much for running this. Thank you.